Hello, everybody. This is Dave Zapponi once again. I'm the CEO of ECHO, the Executive Council of Homeowners, otherwise known as the Educational Council of Homeowners. I want you to know and welcome you to this new year, 2025, where we're going to deal with some solutions and discuss problems in the HOA world. We have a whole series of programming this year. We hope that all of you will participate and be a large part of our conversations. And so today we have a really exciting program. It's called Landscape Design, Non-Functional Turf, and Water Conservation. So we have a really great speaker today that's going to talk to us from Valley Water and talk to us about water conservation and a little bit about the non-functional turf requirements there. And we'll get into that in just a second. But let me tell you a little bit about our mission. At ECHO, our mission is to foster a better quality of life in community associations through education, advocacy, and connections. And for today's event, we have a few housekeeping items. These are now presented on your screen. This slide was sent to all the registered attendees prior to this event. So welcome to all the folks that are participating today. We appreciate your participation. Please take a moment and review the housekeeping items. Today, we will have a large audience of HOA board members, more than 200 people registered for this event. We will do our best to answer your questions, but we won't have enough time to answer everybody's questions, or likely won't, but we will try to prioritize those. At the prerogative of the presenter, we may answer or ask and answer questions during the presentation or only during the Q&A function or session at the end of the webinar. We will answer as many questions as possible. In addition to the live Q&A session, I will answer some questions via text in the Q&A feature during the presentations, and Connor will too. To prioritize your question, please use the upvote button in the Q&A feature. It's the thumbs up. Those questions will with the most upvotes will be answered first. It's easy and simple. Just look for that thumbs up and put it, pick your favorite questions. So you'll need to be doing that as the program rolls. It's at the bottom of the screen. You'll be able to find it there. Those questions with the most thumbs up will get answered first. We also ask that you keep your questions short and general in nature. We may pass on some of those questions that are too specific or too long. Specific questions about your community, as you know, are best asked of your attorney or your management agency or another appropriate expert that's familiar with your situation. Please use the chat feature to report technical issues and to communicate directly with other participants in the webinar. You can direct message other participants and share information between the two of you privately or in general. We do not monitor the chat conversations for questions, but now let me direct your attention to the monitor where we need to give you our disclaimer, our legal disclaimer. None of what is said during this seminar shall be construed as specific legal or expert advice from the speaker, sponsors, or ECHO. If you wish specific advice, we encourage you to contact your attorney or another suitable expert. The information we provide during this webinar is educational in nature and should not be relied upon for specific decision-making purposes. Thank you for that. And now our introduction. Ashley Shannon joined the Valley Water's Water Supply Planning and Conservation Unit over 10 years ago and works with the team to provide water conservation rebates, programs, and education to Santa Clara County residents and businesses. She runs Valley Water's Landscape Rebate Program and Agricultural Mobile Irrigation Lab, among other programs. As an avid gardener, and a retired landscape designer, Ashley has an AS in landscape horticulture from Cabrillo College and a BS in environmental studies from San Jose State University. She also enjoys sharing her knowledge with others. So welcome to the Echo Community Conversation, and we look forward to having you give us your presentation. So Ashley, you can take it away.
Thank you. All right. And Connor, you're sharing on my behalf, right?
That's correct.
Are you sharing it now? I'm not seeing.
Yes, it is. It is up right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just switched my mode. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. So today I'm going to go through just a little bit of background of who I am. So I'm coming today as a representative from Valley Water. I'm not a representative of the state or the state water board where this legislation is from. So I just want to preface that there may be questions that I'm unable to answer, but just going to give you a background. But I'm going to do a brief introduction, kind of explanation of who Valley Water is, and then we'll go through an overview of the regulations and preparing, and then some resources that we have. And then also, as a representative of Valley Water, a lot of the examples and things that I give may be very specific to our service area, which is the County of Santa Clara, but I'll make note of that throughout the presentation. So just keep that in mind, the information with a grain of salt. Things may be different in your areas if you are outside of Valley Water's service area. Next slide. So quick background. So Valley Water, we are a water wholesaler in Santa Clara County. Our service area, we cover the entirety of Santa Clara County. We provide safe, clean, reliable water. So we import and treat water. We have local water supplies. We also provide flood protection. And then healthy creeks and ecosystems. So we've got biologists on hand. We do restoration work, etc. Where I focus specifically is that clean, reliable water side of it, and even more specifically on water conservation within our county. We service about 2 million people within our county. We have 15 different cities. Again, we are a water wholesaler, so we do not sell water directly to the customers within our area. We have about 13 different local water retailers. So if you are within Santa Clara County, you pay your water bill to someone within that county, not to us directly unless you're on a well. But we do manage about 4,700 wells within our service area as well. So all of the programs that some of the programs that I'll mention later are within these territories, within Santa Clara County specifically. Next slide. In our county specifically, we have a pretty diverse water supply. So we get about 50% of our water is imported, and that's from the Delta supplies, as well as Hetch Hetchy supplies and San Francisco Public Utilities, depending on where you are in our county. We also have about 30% of our water supply is local. So this is rainwater that's captured and stored in reservoirs. And our groundwater supply, we have a very robust groundwater system. And then a small percentage of the water that we supply is recycled water. So this is treated wastewater. We have a pretty amazing advanced purification treatment plant. If you're in our county and want to take a tour of it, I highly recommend that. And then we actually consider water conservation part of our water supply. So about 15% of our water supply is water conservation. And our thinking behind this, and kind of in other areas too, is that without our efforts for water conservation, we would have to figure out where to get this 15% of water from. In our county specifically, we've seen population growth just a steady upwards since about the 90s. And so if you look at a chart, that population growth goes straight up. But since the 1990s, when we started implementing water conservation programs, changes to plumbing codes, rebates that we offer, our water usage in our county has remained flat. And that's not per capita water use, that's total water use. So despite a steady increase in participation, our water usage has remained the same. And that's really because we've learned to use water more efficiently. we've learned to conserve. And so our quality of life has not changed, but we've just gotten much more efficient at the way that we use water. Next slide. And just real quick breakdown of how we use water in our county. It's going to be different in different counties, but quite a bit of the water that we use is residential. And quite a bit of that water is outdoors. Much of the water that our businesses use is outdoors as well, although you won't see all of that represented here because not all of our businesses have a dedicated irrigation meter. But a lot of our programs that you'll see and a lot of programs across the state are really focusing on outdoor water conservation because that is the big one at this point on where we're going to see a lot of water conservation. Indoors, a lot of the state we're pretty caught up. You cannot go to you can't go to a big box store and buy a 5-gallon flush toilet anymore. All toilets that are sold within California are high efficiency. So that a lot of that we consider the low-hanging fruit at this point, those indoor conservation efforts. And so really a lot of our effort and effort of other agencies across the state is really focused on outdoor water conservation. We live, especially where we live, I live in Silicon Valley. Everybody is updating their phones and their computers, and whenever the newest technology comes out, everybody is quick to get the latest and the most efficient and the best that's out there. But most of our irrigation, our landscapes, a lot of our landscapes were put in, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And we're still using technology, the sprinklers, the valves, things like that. A lot of those that are still in place are really old technology. I mean, we would never use a phone. I mean, most of us, we're not going to use the same cell phone for, even 10 years. But our irrigation and our landscapes, we kind of leave this outdated, inefficient, old technology in place. And so, we really want to start looking at our landscapes kind of like we do at other technology. Next slide. So just kind of want to get into the benefits of landscape conversion. So when I say landscape conversion, I'm considering that the removal of lawn and the replacement with low water use plants, a landscape that is more suitable to our dry Mediterranean California climate. So water savings is, kind of the big one that we tout as one of the benefits of landscape conversion, but it's not the only. So these are all things to consider as you look at your own landscape and think about the changes that need to be made to it. So some of the benefits are obviously economic, and that's where a lot of us are going to be thinking. So yes, you're going to see lower water bills. Water bills are going up in general, across the state. But you're going to see reduction in water use leading to reduction in water bills. But some things that people don't consider is that you may see cost savings in other areas. So maintenance, you may not have to have maintenance teams come out quite as often. Lawns, need mowing once a week and a lot of upkeep. Other types of landscape actually really, some of them only need quarterly maintenance, things like that. So you're looking at that. Also decrease cost and liability, and I'll get into this a little bit later on. But it's important to consider the damage that is often caused by irrigation, inefficient irrigation or poorly designed irrigation. So overspray onto fences, staining of fences, cracks and sidings of buildings that are going to hit with sprinklers, low sprinkler runoff into parking lots that can really damage the asphalt. How often are you having to make those repairs that are due to excessive irrigation? So things to consider. And then there's also the aesthetics and the environmental benefits. Looking at this holistically, when we put in landscapes that have a diversity of plants in them, we have habitat. We increase the biodiversity. We have areas, we're all hearing about monarch butterflies going extinct. A lot of this is due to, the loss of habitat. And so the conversion of a lawn to a low water use landscape where we have flowering plants and a variety is definitely beneficial to the environment around us. And then just the reduction of greenhouse gases. Quite a bit of goes into maintaining a lawn, gas powered mowers, edging, the pesticides that are used to kind of, control pests, fertilizers, things like that. So kind of all things that we are looking into. And then lastly, and then kind of what I'll go into is just regulation compliance. So I'll start heading into there. The next slide. So I think Connor mentioned to me that you all have kind of been talking about this over the last year, which is great. I am still talking to sites sometimes that had no idea that this is coming or that this is a reality. But the state has passed legislation for the state ban on the irrigation of non-functional turf. So this is AB 1572. Again, just to reiterate, I am not a representative of the state. I'm not here on their behalf, and there may be questions that that I can't answer about this bill because a lot of us and a lot of different water agencies and stuff, we are also trying to figure this out because some of the details have not been worked out yet. So I'll kind of get into that as well. But essentially, AB 1572 was approved in October of 2023. And it prohibits the use of potable water on irrigation for the irrigation of non-functional turf. This bill does not apply to recycled water. So if you have lawn area that is watered with recycled water, even if it's non-functional turf, this ban does not apply to those areas. It does not apply to what is considered functional turf, and that is actually I'll get into a little bit later some examples of what is considered functional versus non-functional. But essentially functional turf is areas of lawn that are used regularly for recreation. So this may be a park, cemeteries are considered functional, golf courses, playing fields. Residential lawns are not included in this as well. So if your HOA has individual homes and those, the landscapes are maintained, by those homes and they own that land, this is not applied to those homes. For an HOA situation, this is common area lawns, not, an individual backyard lawn or something like that of a home. Let's see. This is the AB 1572 makes it it is permanent and it is something that's coming up. The bill was introduced by the Metropolitan Water District and really kind of in response to their water supply and the recent MOU that was signed about the Colorado River. And they've made a commitment to reduce water usage, specifically on non-functional turf, as part of it. So Metropolitan Water District worked closely with the state to draft this. They may have, be able to answer kind of tough questions a little bit better because they were deeply involved in the creation of this legislation. In the legislation, you'll see kind of the reasoning behind this ban on the irrigation of non-functional turf. And I know this is a little bit wordy right here, but it was kind of taken directly from the legislation. But really, the irrigation of non-functional turf is seen as wasteful and incompatible with state policy related to climate change, water conservation, and reducing the reliance on the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta ecosystem. It's also recognized in the legislation that, next slide, that climate change is bringing significant enduring reductions in water in California's water supply, and these are steps to respond to that. The image on the right is, if you haven't looked at it, you can look at the state drought monitor, and it gets updated regularly, kind of to show where different parts of the state are in. I pulled this image on January 7th, and so this is a pretty current representation. The yellow areas are abnormally dry. The kind of peachish color is moderate, and as you get darker, the severity increases. So you can see that right now, we're in January. We don't usually expect this map to have much red on it, if at all, this time of year. But we are starting to see a little bit more in the southern part of the state, and it has been a pretty dry year in the south. I did see the snowpack report. I think there's a recent one that was either done today or yesterday, and it was I think it was about 160% of usual. So the snowpack isn't a dry year, but I know that rainfall has been really disproportionate in the state this year. Next slide. So here's a little bit the timeline of the non-functional turf, the ban on the irrigation of non-functional turf. So it is a phased approach, and it starts with state and government buildings. So this may be courthouses, parks. Even within a park, there may be functional and non-functional. We've seen in our county, we've already seen some government sites who are, going through that process of identifying where they have non-functional turf and working to convert those. So their compliance, they have to meet the compliance by 2027. The next phase is institutional, commercial, and industrial sites. So that's by 2028. The next one that you're all interested in is 2029, which is the HOAs and similar entities. This does not apply to multifamily facilities such as apartment complexes. It's really homeowners associations and similar type associations. And then lastly, in 2031, it is the government facilities in disadvantaged communities, and this one is also dependent on funding for those areas. And so in 2030 is when self-compliance starts for these sites. Now, the legislation, how I've been, I've been to a few presentations on it myself, and there's always a lot of questions from retailers and right now, the legislation was written as to, it describes what it is, what the ban is, what it is. But it is up to the State Water Board to really hash out the nitty-gritties of how this will get done and how it will work. And so those things are still being figured out. And I think that, they're going to take, up until, the next couple of years to flush those out. How exactly will enforcement look? How exactly will the fines work? Enforcement is up to the state or to local agencies, but how exactly that will work has not been defined yet. So I couldn't tell you right now, and it will look different depending where it is on the state. Different local agencies may have different ways of enforcing it. I know that one city in our county specifically has actually already incorporated the turf irrigation ban into part of their city laws. Isn't the word? My mind went blank, but they've already essentially started this, so they're ahead of it. It is incorporated into their city. And within their city limits, sites cannot irrigate non-functional turf. So they're already working with sites, contacting them, mapping out the turf, etc. So this will look different depending kind of where you are in the state. And if you have specific questions about how it's going to get enforced in your area, I do recommend reaching out to your local water agency. If it's a public, if it's a private water agency, to reach out to the city that you're in, and they'll have some more information on this. They may also tell you that they're still kind of figuring it out as well. But essentially, the bill does authorize penalties. And again, right now, kind of the nitty-gritty of how this will be rolled out is still in process. I did add a QR code in there if you want to go straight to the legislation to take a look at that. Take a look at that legislation. All right, next slide. Within our county, and this is very specific to Santa Clara County, where we are in, where my agency is in, and I I think I have heard that a lot of you are within our county, so I'm hoping this is applicable to you. We actually have an ordinance in place where we have banned the irrigation of non-functional turf as well. And right now a ban is in place, but we do not enforce it. Our enforcement is triggered by a drought situation. But in a drought situation, we could issue fines. And so if next year, for example, we went into a drought, it would trigger our ability to enforce this ordinance and issue fines. And so that would be ahead of the states. It's a little bit separate, not to confuse things. But if we are in a drought situation, that would be kind of an immediate call for stopping irrigation of any non-functional turf at that time. Again, right now we are not in a declared drought situation in our county, and so we're not actively enforcing this. If we get any complaints, we will just it's educational. We'll let sites know that we received a complaint, and we'll work with water retailers, but we're not issuing any fines. We have, next slide. For our ordinance, again, this just prohibits irrigation of non-functional turf in our county, specifically Santa Clara County. So if you're out of this county, that doesn't apply to you. But one thing that we have done that you may find helpful is that we've created at least our definition of how we're interpreting functional versus non-functional. Some areas are very obvious, what's going to be considered functional. Others, it's a little bit of a gray area, and I definitely understand that. And I think that a lot of agencies understand that when you're walking your site, there may be areas that are, a little bit questionable, and you'll have to kind of decide and justify which areas maybe your HOA is considering functional and non-functional. But we do have a list of definitions. I know that you can't read that. It's just, but we do have the flyer on our site. But I'm going to go through a series of photographs of lawn and just kind of talk about the different areas that at least how Valley Water has interpreted of functional versus non-functional, which I think hopefully is helpful. So this first example, really I just had to do kind of a quick walk around our facility, even the neighboring facilities. Often when I'm driving by, if I see a good example, I'll pull over and I'll get out and I'll take a picture. I'm sure people are kind of wondering what I'm doing, but just to try to get pictures out to people. So these are businesses, but the idea is still the same. So these are both images of non-functional turf. They're areas of turf that are not getting used for, regular organized recreation. One good thing to ask is the only time that someone is really walking on this lawn to push a lawnmower? And if that answer is yes, that is probably a good indication that is non-functional and be held to this ban. The other one is a little area that I think is at, maybe a gas station or the entrance to a business. It's just a small patch of lawn area, again, not being used for any recreation. That would be considered a non-functional example. Next slide. We got a couple more in here. So narrow parking strips, narrow strips along sidewalks, narrow strips in parking lots, narrow strips at entrances to your into your facilities. Those are all really good places to kind of start with and identify as non-functional turf. These areas are also just logistically extremely hard to irrigate without wasting a substantial amount of the water that's being applied. So our sprinklers are really not designed well to irrigate a narrow area. So for new construction, this actually isn't even allowed anymore. So if you were having to building a new site, there are restrictions on how wide an area can be to be irrigated with sprinklers. These would not cut it anymore, but these are existing sites, and so these are good indications of non-functional turf. Next slide. Okay, so these two are entrances to homeowners associations that are in our area. Again, these are really just aesthetic. They're not used by the residences. really just kind of for a green expanse on the way in. These areas would be considered, we would consider these non-functional turf areas. They're usually outside of the gate of the community and really not areas in general that would be used for recreation. Now, if your site specifically, held functions, a couple times a year or a few times on these, you can make a case. Again, there are some gray areas, but just at first glance, these are areas that, we would consider non-functional. Next slide. Again, these are actually some photos from projects that have been submitted for our landscape rebate program. I'm going to get into that program a little bit later, but these are projects that sites actually did convert. And so again, narrow lawn strip areas, really couldn't make much of a case that this was a functional area. Kind of narrow meandering areas along sidewalks, along streets. Those are really good ones. Just kind of look at and say, hey, okay, these areas are probably pretty difficult to maintain anyway. Mowing, edging, trying to keep the water on those areas, not overspraying onto cars, etc. Good candidates for conversion as well. Next slide. Okay, and then these are just some examples of a couple HOA sites that have gone through a rebate program recently. I just did a little bit of a search, and some before and after photos. So again, we had some just kind of small little islands of grass that weren't being used. Narrow strips along sidewalks where a lot of water was getting wasted. You can see that a lot of these lawn areas really look kind of ratty anyway. They're hard to maintain. They've probably been a struggle to keep. So those are ideal examples of areas that you might want to prioritize as far as conversion goes. And the next slide. This is a school, but I just wanted to give you an example of a site that may have both non-functional and functional turf. So at this school, and it kind of will depend on its use, but you see the playing field that's on the right. That is a very clear example of a functional turf that would not be subject to this ban. Near the bottom middle of the area, you see a courtyard area. That's likely where students congregate at lunch. They use that area, they sit and eat on it. That would be considered a functional area. But for this school specifically, the lawn area on the top is outside of the school area where students are allowed to be. So they're not out there during classes in between. It's along a pretty busy road. To my knowledge, they don't hold events out there. And so those are areas that, if investigated further, may be considered non-functional and should be prioritized for, and may be held compliant to the ban. There may be also, I could see some tiny little lawn strips, a little bit harder to see, but to the right of those solar panels, or to the left of the solar panels in the parking lot, again, those narrow little strips of lawn aren't functional. So, there are examples of sites that will have both functional and non-functional for a homeowners association. It will be helpful for you to walk your sites and kind of make that determination and ask some questions about, what you could consider functional and non-functional. Next slide. So in preparation for AB 5072, I highly recommend that you start your planning now. It is going to, if you're trying to come into compliance kind of right before the deadline, you may be surprised about the budget that you're supposed to have, or the availability of contractors if you want to do conversion. And so I think that it's really good to start preparing now. One thing that I meant to mention earlier, for the state compliance, there is nothing in the legislation that says that the lawn has to be converted to something. The legislation is specifically for stopping irrigation of those non-functional turf areas. So compliance may be as simple as not irrigating anymore and leaving a brown lawn in place. Now, our hope at Valley Water, at least, and with our rebate programs, is that people will choose to convert to something, because we don't want, and I'm sure you don't want a brown lawn in place. But essentially the choice will be yours. So there may be areas that you kind of let go brown and let go wild. Maybe they're on the outskirts of the HOA, and those areas are not a priority. Maybe funding isn't spent on those areas, but maybe there's other very highly visible areas like the entrance, or around homes or around your clubhouse or something like that, where it's very visible and you really want it to look great and you want your residents to love it. Those may be areas that you prioritize for, not only not irrigating, but converting to a new landscape with water efficient plants on there. I think that at this point, though, the biggest thing to do is really start education and awareness, so that your residents are prepared. I've worked with several HOAs who have gone through our rebate program. And some of them, it has been, and this is before, this ban was in place. And so the conversions were, sites going through it because they wanted to make that change. But I've had to come personally to several meetings where it was very contentious and people were very worried about, what it was going to look like to not have the lawn in place. And it can be very hard getting everyone on board. And so I think that right now, just starting that awareness, that education, letting residents know what's in the works will be extremely helpful. The next thing to do is really start mapping, identifying. So you have an understanding of, how many square feet of non-functional turf area you have, or do you have, maybe that all of your area is functional and you don't need to do anything to comply. And so, on the right, that image is areas that, I just kind of went into Google Earth. Google Earth is a really great free tool that you can use to measure square footages, and just started highlighting areas that, will likely be non-functional turf. And that kind of gives an idea. So if you're able to, if you have a landscaper that you work with, this is something that they may be able to help you with or to do for you, or a landscape designer, but really doing some walkthroughs of the site and saying, okay, this area over here, we think it's functional for, X, Y, and Z. Those can be your reasonings. In this area over here, yeah, it's just a narrow parking strip. We'll really need to prioritize that one. And so making a plan and kind of developing an idea of what you want to do. Are you going to turn the irrigation off? Are you going to cap the sprinklers? Are you going to convert it to a new landscape? And those are questions that you'll have to start asking yourself. And then obviously the next step from there is developing a budget. What can you spend on this? Are there rebate opportunities in your area that can help with these costs? Weighing your options from, conversion, or do we just mulch over an area? Do we just leave it as it is? Looking at those different costs, and again, kind of trying to identify your return on investment, what your conversion costs may be. Again, as I mentioned before, considerations are your maintenance costs, your water costs, any property damage that's maybe done from turf, things like that. And the last thing you want to consider, and this is actually a big one, and I think it's forgotten a lot, is a maintenance plan. If you have a lot of lawn on site and you have a maintenance company that's working for you that really only knows how to, mow and blow, there's a lot of times the term used, but is really focused on lawn maintenance, what is needed for either that service or a different maintenance service to be able to maintain new plants that you put in. So that is something to consider as you're making these changes, is what is your plan for maintenance after these lawn areas are converted or irrigation is stopped. Things like that is also something to consider as you're planning. Next slide. So I'm going to go through some resources that are available. Again, coming from Valley Water, I I'm a water conservation specialist there. I run our landscape rebate program. I'm going to give a lot of examples of what Valley Water is doing in our region specifically. That may be different in your region, but a lot of agencies at this point have similar programs. The rebate rates may be different. The rebate caps may be different, slight differences in requirements, but a lot of these programs you may be able to find in your area. Save Our Water has a great resource. It's an online tool where you can enter in your zip code and it will find you your local rebates. And so if you enter that in and you're in, metropolitan's service area, it'll pull up, the rebates that are available in your area and direct you to those web pages. If you pull it up for our county, it'll pull up either our rebate directly or our different retailers in there, and they often link to our rebates. So again, the rebates that I'm going to go through in a little bit more in depth the next few slides are for Santa Clara County specifically, but it's mostly to kind of give you an idea of what may be available in your area. I'm also hoping that a lot of you are in our county and that you'll reach out to me after to participate in the rebate program. So a little self-serving as well. Another resource that was recently developed by East Bay Municipal Utility District, East Bay MUD. They are our neighbor. The nice thing about working for a water agency is that unlike the private sector, we love to talk to each other and share information and share resources and collaborate. And so we talk quite a bit, but East Bay MUD recently worked with stopwaste.org to create a return on investment ROI calculator for lawn conversion projects. Their calculator is specific to their region. It incorporates water rates into the calculator. But if you're outside the region and you want to kind of play with it, just keep in mind that the water rate may be slightly different in your area. But it is really a great tool to play around with and just start thinking about the different things that will go into calculating your return on investment. So again, your project costs, savings on your water bill, but also your maintenance costs and your maintenance costs and other types of costs that may be associated with it. So again, it is specific to East Bay MUD's region, but I still think it's a great tool to go through and look at. Next slide. So the programs here are the suite of programs that Valley Water offers specifically in our service area. The ones that are highlighted in bold are related to the landscape sector. And some of them are more for residential, some are for commercial. I'm not going to go over all of them in depth, but you can see we have quite a suite of tools that we're using. We're really trying to tackle water conservation from all different sides. And so we offer rebates, which is, essentially giving money to sites to make these changes. We offer programs that are free programs and services. So and I'll get into those a little bit. And then we also do quite a bit for education and outreach. So we do these webinars, we provide trainings for professionals, really trying hard. We've got some pretty aggressive water conservation goals that we are trying to reach in our county specifically, and these tools are helping us reach those goals. Next slide. So our landscape rebate program is our most robust program that we offer. Again, other agencies may offer something similar in these areas. In our region specifically, the rebate for commercial sites or multifamily sites, such as the homeowners association, would be up to $100,000 per site. Some areas, excuse me. Some areas in our county offer cost sharing, so we partner with a retailer in an area to offer a little bit more. So you may see that the rebate is a little bit more in other areas. But we kind of cover all aspects of the landscape. So it's landscape conversion, irrigation equipment upgrades, rainwater capture, and I'll go through those kind of as in the next slides. So our landscape conversion rebate, this is specifically for the removal of lawn and then the replacement of that lawn with low water using plants that are adaptable to our region. We do have requirements as to how many plants and what type of plants are put back in. And then as well as that the conversion of sprinklers to low flow irrigation. A lot of the water waste associated with a lawn is really associated with the equipment that is used to irrigate a lawn. So we do require the conversion of that in our program. This rebate is based on square footage. So we will measure the existing lawn area. That will set the total cap for your site as far as how many square feet you would be eligible for. And then at the end of the project, we would measure again and issue a rebate for that. Next slide. We also offer rebates and this is a rebate that we actually created in response to this, the non-functional turf irrigation ban. We do recognize that, our ultimate goal would be for sites to remove their lawn and replace it with low water use plants. That really is, the most sustainable thing that we can do. Plants offer, they help hold soil inside, they help clean our stormwater runoff, they help, filter, increase biodiversity, etc. But we do understand that sites, that are trying to comply, may not have the budget to do a full conversion and may instead opt to remove their lawn and then for now just replace that with mulch. So removing the lawn and covering the area over with mulch. Hopefully, phasing in planting in the future, but for now, just that conversion. So for that, we offer a rebate that's $1 per square foot. It's a little bit quicker of a rebate for sites, and it's another option that is eligible for a rebate. Next slide. All right. So this is a video that we created. One of a homeowners association that we worked with pretty closely in our area to get their conversion done. This is actually a site that I had to attend a few meetings, and a lot of residences were really concerned, really nervous that conversion of lawn meant that they were going to have, a desert scape, that it was going to be lava rocks and cactus. And a lot of residents have, kind of a really hard time with visualizing what that land, a landscape would look like without the lawn area in it. Ultimately, they did vote on it, and this is before the ban, so it wasn't total requirement, but and their conversion was beautiful and colorful. And so this is hopefully this works, but this is a quick video on that project.
We started thinking about it, I would say 2 years ago, when the drought became more serious and the water district offered us a rebate if we were to convert some of the lawn.
Well, the impetus was there were the 3 birch trees in the front area were looking poor. The shrubs, they're really not presenting very well. They're old, they're taking a lot of water, and our water bill was getting higher. So we looked at the mandates coming down the road, and then we decided, all right, well, let's just do this, but let's do the whole thing. And then it was about a 2 or 3 month process by which everything got tore up.
That's a lot of cash. The messaging that we're getting out that we're in a severe drought and people have the will and the ability and the cost savings through Valley Water's programs to get and deliver more and more conversions like this one.
I knew we had to do it because water is such a scarcity. There's no choice, really. But it looks so much better. and so pretty and colorful, and so many residents are happy with it.
Because I recall being here when it was all grass and it was shrubs and not a pretty thing to see. Now, it's a destination location. The flora and the fauna, I mean, it just adds so much to what this community is all about. And I think the residents here are thrilled to see this transformation as well.
All right, next, thanks. So I only have about 3 more slides. Thank you for bearing with me on all these. But a couple additional programs that we offer, and some agencies may also participate in these types of programs. One of them is our large landscape survey program. So we do actually have a contract where we will send someone out, an irrigation professional, to do a full evaluation of an irrigation system. And, this is a really great tool to identify, areas where you're probably wasting water because you've got old equipment or poorly spaced equipment, etc. This program also offers site-specific recommendations and irrigation budgets. So with this program, we actually work with water retailers. They provide water data about their large sites, and our vendor creates a water budget for these sites. And so you can see, you can compare water usage, actual water usage, to what the recommended water usage is for that site. It's a great tool for landscapers to use to help, keep them on budget. So you may find, especially if you're in our area, if you look at the map, you can put in your address and look at this map, and you can see that your site may already be a part of this project, and that you could get a login to go in and look at your site specific information. But it's a great free tool to help budget. Understanding how much water you use at a site is really important. It is hard to save when we don't understand how much we're using. So if you are not already working with a landscaper to really track and monitor, water usage for the whole site, I highly recommend, looking into a plan to do that. And this is a really great tool. And then the last thing that I'll mention, and actually you can go to the next slide. We have a couple other programs. One of them is a custom rebate. A lot of times it's for commercial sites, but we have seen homeowner associations go through it as well. But if you have a proposed project that saves water, and it may be custom, it may be, we've had a lot of it's cooling towers. If you've got, cooling towers are old and inefficient, you may be able to get a rebate for upgrading those. We've had other rebates that were based around like a reverse osmosis system that was using a lot of water, and they switched over. And so that's a measure rebate that we offer to sites, and it's custom. And then lastly, we offer rebates for sub-meters. So if you have, if your HOA all shares a water bill, and that gets kind of split between the members, we've done studies to show that when people are charged for their actual water usage and they can see their actual water usage, estimated water savings we get from switching over from just kind of a shared water bill to a specific water bill is about 10 to 30% annually. And really this comes back to knowledge of how much an individual is using. And so we offer rebates for the installation of these sub-meters at sites. Next slide. All right, and lastly, just in conclusion, one of the motto with the site and that Valley Water uses it is that water conservation is a California way of life. It is something that is going to be more and more prevalent, and something that really should be on all of our minds. And so our hope is to not just have, drought response water conservation, so everyone, taking shorter showers during a drought, but to really make this as an ongoing conservation and just a way of our life. The non-functional turf irrigation ban, it is coming. It is going to be mandatory. So I highly recommend, starting your planning now, and, figuring out, how you're going to tackle this. And then taking advantage of rebates and resources that are in place to help you make those changes. And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Great. Fantastic. We appreciate your presentation, and I will ask that those of you there, we have 160 people or so here, go to the Q&A feature and vote for your favorite, with the thumbs up vote for your favorite questions. Ashley, I'll tell you, up in the right corner of your screen, I believe there's a caret there that you can drop down on. You can see the most thumbs up, and sort that way. And then what I'll do is give you some launch you into the program. So we'll now take a look at the questions and use that thumbs up, and we'll be right back after you have a chance to take a look at those. And let's see. Most thumbs up, and it's in the Q&A feature, Ashley. So you'll see the number one. I'll read the questions. It seems that with 22 votes, we have from Mary Ann Monk. You get the award today for the most votes, Mary Ann. How are trees being exempted or included in the law?
Thank you. I meant to cover this, so thanks for that. In the way it's written right now, it says that there are exceptions in regards to maintaining the health of a tree. How that is being interpreted is a little bit of a question right now, and I've seen different interpretations of it. Some interpretations I have seen are that if there is a tree within a specific irrigation valve zone, that valve zone would be exempt. Other interpretations I've seen is that no, it is within the canopy of that tree area specifically. Valley Water has interpreted it for our ban to be the canopy of that tree area. So if you had a large expanse of lawn and there was one, small tree that was plopped in the middle of it, our interpretation is that it would not exempt that whole area. But that is one that I think it needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, because at every presentation that I've been to, even with presentations at two agencies, most of our questions in the audience were really about that and how it would be addressed.
Okay, and so Rebecca has
really
the
not maybe an exact answer, but
okay. So Rebecca has the second most popular question, and that's with 20 upvotes. Rebecca asks, the rebates are game-changing for small and medium-sized properties. However, for large properties of several acres, the conversions could cost millions, which many associations simply won't be able to afford. Do you foresee the state freeing up more funding for very large HOA conversions?
Yeah, I don't, at the state level, I have not been part of those conversations. I'm not sure. I know that, there are grants that some agencies have been able to get to help with increased funding, and those grants are from the state. We are exploring at Valley Water, we're exploring kind of how we set up our site cap. Right now, it's just per site. We have had questions as to whether we could change that to per dedicated irrigation meter on a site, which would allow for more funding. And so those are questions right now that we are kind of looking at our budget to see if there's changes that we can make to our rebate program. But I think that on the state level, I haven't seen anything that's, for sure saying the states would provide this funding. But that's something to keep an eye out for.
Okay, that's a good answer, Ashley. Rebecca, one thing you might consider doing, and Ashley, you can correct me or you can add on, is if you stop irrigating this non-functional turf area, that would in essence exempt you from the legislation. So that's number one. You could do that until some funding becomes available or until you can plan better. You may have a dead lawn for a few months out of the year, maybe August and in this particular area. So you might have a couple of months where it's not as lovely as it usually is. The other thing is to redefine the turf itself from non-functional to functional and make sure that you have something going on there and use the turf. Now, that may not be practical in your particular community, but I know some communities it is very practical to put a lunch table out there and get people to use the area, and then it is no longer non-functional. Would that work, Ashley?
Yeah, now I have heard of sites like, oh, we, installed a doggy poop bag dispenser, and therefore this area is now functional. Or, we put a bench here or there and it's now functional. I think that there is some gray areas in those areas. And I think that you may not always be able to, use that as a definition. So for instance, if you have kind of a large, lawn median area in the middle of the street, and you try to define that as functional area, it may not work. But yeah, I think that if you can justify that, like it is regular organized recreation, you're gonna have events there, etc. But again, that is something that you may have to discuss and define with the whoever is responsible in your local area. So, that may be your local water agency. A lot of the water agencies are the city. Those are who you'll have to work with on defining what is the non-functional and the functional. I think that for HOAs, a lot of it is going to be left up to you to decide and make those justifications. But again, you may be in an area where the local, authority who is responsible for enforcing this, they may have different requirements on how they view the enforcement.
Okay, well, I guess the brown area is the gray area, right? So
yes, yeah.
That, right? Yeah. So you make your own decisions at the HOA level, at the board level. You mentioned enforcement, so I'm going to push that. Who is enforcing the law? Where's the enforcement come from? And what can be expected in terms of penalties or other type of mechanisms?
Yeah, so enforcement is, the local agency, it could be the city or the local water agency. Again, if you pay your water bill to a private water retailer, they wouldn't be the enforcement, or it is the state. And so I think that that's going to get a little bit better defined. But for instance, Valley Water, we are not an enforcement agency.
No.
We would not, have jurisdiction over that in our area. Our ordinance is a little bit different, but again, we're not the enforcement agency there.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the penalties are?
The penalties, as it's written, is up to $500. What I'm not sure of is that if that is the penalty could be charged multiple times and the frequency of that. And so that I think is being fleshed out as well.
Okay, well, let's move on from this one. So Brian asks, who has the authority to determine function versus non-function? Who's the water? So we're getting to the same point.
I think that's what, yeah.
Good question. So, and then Georgia McGreal, how much non-functional turf can be retained when a well-established tree is located in otherwise non-functional turf space?
So again, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to the previous answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I on that note though, I do really recommend if you've got large, well-established trees, that oftentimes their root systems may expand even beyond their canopy and maybe expanded into lawn areas. And I do recommend, if you have the ability to work with a licensed arborist, to do an evaluation of those and make a plan. for prioritizing the health of those trees. There are ways to transition trees from the irrigation that they're kind of accustomed to from a lawn. So trees within a lawn area are really not irrigated in a way that is healthy for the tree for the most part. So lawn irrigation is frequent and it's short. Trees really ideally need the opposite of that. They need deep irrigation and they need it infrequently. But to suddenly transition a tree from, that frequent irrigation to the infrequent may be a shock to the tree. So you can transition trees to being irrigated deeply and less frequently. But my recommendation really would be to work with an arborist to establish a plan for those. If there are trees that are going to be that you feel will be affected by it.
Yes, we seem to continue. We got quite a few thumbs up on this next question. So let's just nip it in the bud because I think you've addressed it. But non-functional turf, does it only apply to human activity or can it be for, if you're walking your dog out there as a dog area, is that okay?
Designated dog parks are exempt, so they are considered functional. Now, if somebody occasionally lets their dog out on a lawn area, I don't think that really could be considered regular organized recreation, but you may be able to define it as such. If there is one specific area that maybe isn't an official, dog park area at your HOA, but it is where everyone takes their pets and everyone gathers there. I can think of an area near my kids' school where in the evening, everybody in that neighborhood is out there with their dogs and they're all using it as a unofficial dog park. That may be something to consider, but dog parks in general are exempt from this. They're considered functional.
Okay, so when you're replacing your non-functional turf, here's a question. And the question is about mulches and especially the flammability of mulches and DG or granite. Who's that? What is it?
Decomposed granite.
Yeah. So do you need? What about mulch in terms of it being a fire hazard? Can you speak to that as a replacement to a non-functional turf?
Yeah, I think that's going to be regional, and if you've got specific restrictions in your areas that are pertaining to fire safety, definitely follow those. I know, it is kind of dependent on the location of these areas. We still do recommend mulch, like a wood chip mulch for our rebate program. But I know there are concerns about having that, especially kind of like up against a building or within a certain number of feet from a building. So there are, decomposed granite is something that is qualifying under our rebate program, gravel, cobble, things like that. I don't really recommend using cobble or stones kind of in large areas. They're not, especially under a tree, they're not really that healthy for it, and they're hot. But this is something that I think would be kind of site specific and something that you would take into consideration. Usually most areas will have some guidelines about fire escaping, and there may be certain, specific restrictions for your area as to plant material recycling or mulch, etc. in your area. So I really would say that this is kind of a site specific question. Yeah,
that's good. So Paul Connors is going to ask the question here. We have 12 upvotes for it. Please remember to use your upvote feature. If you have multiple non-contiguous turf areas, do you total together? Do you total them to be? And you total them to be more than 5,000 square feet, or is each treated separately?
I don't, as far as the legislation goes, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's part of the nitty-gritty that's being worked out and something that the state can answer in the legislation. I don't believe that is defined. My assumption that it would be total, not contiguous areas, but that's just my assumption.
Yeah, likely that'll be the
Yeah.
outcome of this. It's gonna be based on the property. And it'll be the common area of the property, and it'll be the sum total of all. But that's an opinion, not a fact. Okay. We are using monosporum ground cover instead of grass. Does that count as non-functional turf?
Yeah, myoporum is a low water using ground cover. No, it would not count as turf grass. And actually, this gets a little bit technical, but this restriction doesn't apply to turf grass or lawn alternatives that use I think it's 0.3 of evapotranspiration rate. But essentially, if there's something that is, you know, a lot of times like this might be like a native no-mow grass or something like that that uses a small fraction of the water that a regular lawn uses. That's taken into consideration too. And if it is a low enough water user, it wouldn't be subject to this. But no, I don't, you know, myoporum or ivy or other things like that are not called out in this restriction.
Okay, so that's good to know. Erica Burns asked the question, what if the area has a tree on it that needs to be watered? Okay, I think we answered that one. Is turf used primarily as pet exercise area considered recreational, considered non-functional? We answered that one as well. And give me 2 seconds here. I want to refresh and just make sure we get some of these off here. Is dead lawn considered a fire hazard? How dead?
Yeah, it could be. I'm not an expert in that area. So I don't know if I could comment on that.
Yeah, it's a question. It can catch fire, just like most trees can catch fire, even if they're living and healthy. It can take a few years for plants to mature in converted areas. During that time, the plant required more water than existing turf would have needed. So water use is not reduced immediately and actually increases in the short term. Please comment, as most people are not aware of this. So
apologies. So plants, low water use plants do need more water to establish, but more water than they will need once they are established. I would argue that they don't need more water than the lawn that they replace though in the establishment period. You're usually irrigating kind of a small area right next to that plant, you know, usually a gallon-sized plant. And so, you know, we've done a study in our area on water savings from turf conversion, and we do see that water savings increases in the first 5 years and then kind of flattens out after 5 years is where you really hit your peak at water savings. But water savings does start occurring in that first year. But I do think it is really important for people to remember that, you know, when you are installing low water use plants or drought tolerant plants during that establishment period, they are not as, you know, water wise or as water hardy as they will be eventually. So yes, they do need irrigation during that establishment period, but I would argue still that it's still less than what a lawn would use in that area.
okay, so here's a question that I think I know the answer of to. In an HOA has common area and it has private property area. This is a single family development that has an HOA, and each of them have lawns in their front yard. And they want to know if they're required to meet the standards in the law. And I guess that's a question of who owns that lawn in the front yard. And is it you privately, or is it owned in common with your neighbors, right?
Yeah. I think that that may be a question that could be a little bit of a gray area also. I mean, if those front yard areas are regularly used by those homeowners, those lawn areas, you could probably make a case that they're functional. I do think that they will be evaluated as under the common area. And so just deciding whether they're functional or not, they wouldn't be necessarily exempt just because they're in front of the home. Not in the way that like if that lawn area was owned and maintained by the homeowner itself, that is like 100% exempt from it. But I do think that that is kind of one of those gray areas that will need to be established.
Mhm.
Are those areas regularly used by those residences? And it may be that
Yeah, but the law
They are.
doesn't apply to private property, right?
it doesn't apply to private property. No,
Yeah, so the
individual.
HO
Yeah.
If
I mean,
these are
this is
homes,
private property. Yeah.
these
yeah.
are homes, and if it's private property, then it doesn't apply
Correct.
to the home.
Yeah.
So if it's common area, then you're really talking about whether it's being used or not. That's
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah.
Okay, single family development. We have 4 to 6, 8 condo units in a building. In front of many of these buildings is a strip of lawn, which homeowners may use for recreation, even though that turf is considered a common area. These units have no other access to turfed recreation area near the building. And so I'm assuming the question is this non-functional turf or is it turf?
I think that that is really similar to the last question.
And
So
that's one you're really gonna have to have,
Yeah.
that's more specific to the property and who the owner
Yeah.
of the property is, and if people really truly are using it or if they're not. And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit of it's a good question, but it is one of those
Yeah.
gray area. That one I think is really gray.
And again, it would be much easier if I had very black and white answers to all of these. But I do think that there's a lot that is kind of getting
Okay, so I
defined,
think this
yeah.
is the anonymous asked question, and there are 8 a thumbs up on this one. Who determines whether it's a functional turf or non-functional turf? It's your water agency, right?
Yeah, I think we've answered that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she also said that the state may step in at some point, or water department, DWR or something, Department of Water Resources. Okay, our landscape maintenance company says that lawn is the least expensive to maintain. It's mostly mow and blow and edge. Plant beds require a lot of trimming, pruning, fertilization, and weeding. So the question is, I don't know. What is the question? That's a statement. Is that what you understand? Is it easier to maintain the lawn?
I think that it will depend. One, it is dependent on the type of plant material that is put in, the type of garden. Like the site before that was talking about the Myoporum ground cover that they put in. That is extremely low maintenance. It doesn't really require shearing or deadheading. And once it fills in, it's 100% coverage. And so you're not going to have a lot of weeds. Whereas you can have a garden that's very, if you have put in all roses that require a lot of pruning and things like that, and just quick example of this. So I do think it is dependent on the new landscape that is put in. However, the frequency of maintenance, should be less. With the frequency of maintenance is more with a lawn, so you'll likely have someone on site, weekly to do the maintenance there. Most of what I have seen is that there is a decrease in costs in maintenance for non-lawn areas, but again, it will be dependent on the landscape, and it may be dependent on the company that you work with as well. So there are a lot of
Okay.
differences. Yeah.
I'm kind of jumping ahead because I think some of these questions are pretty specific, or people want specific answers as we get moving ahead. And one of them is is about the capture of CO2 and lawns, their environmental impact, and really your agency is about water supply issues, correct? That's what this program is really trying to get to. not
Yes, but we
CO2
do
capture.
take consideration, climate change does directly impact our water supply, and so it is something that we do take into consideration. Lawns do capture CO2, but also the maintenance of lawns is a big producer of CO2. So the gas-powered equipment that is used to maintain the lawns, may offset the positive side of the lawns as far as capturing that CO2 or creating oxygen. So you've got quite a bit of inputs that are going into a lawn, and those mowers are a lot. So mowers, edgers, blowers, all of that, it needs to be considered as well.
And remember, if you're not in the Valley Water District area, go to your local water districts, and there probably are programs available. And I think you just heard a few of them. I know that we had East Bay Mud speaking and a couple other ones speaking at a recent conference, and they had quite a few programs available. So if you are interested in converting, there is plenty of water available out there, programming available out there that will help you, not only in this particular area for non-functional turf, but other aspects of your community as well. And there are some good questions here and all that. And thank you, owner, the name owner out there. DG is a decomposed granite, and that's what I couldn't remember. So thank you for reminding me. Getting old. So let me see. Non-composite civil liability is up to $500. We got that. Microplastics and contaminants. These are all specific to activities that you might do. It wouldn't be a bad idea to talk to your water resource people and just get an understanding of that. Some of this is going to be is in the gray area, as we've mentioned here several times. So it's good to try to understand what it is. Now, one of these, there were a couple questions in here about well water. And if you have your own well and you're pulling out groundwater to do the watering of turf, does this law apply to well water on property?
I saw that question ahead, and I was trying to do some quick Googling because I realized the regulation calls out potable water specifically, and it does say that recycled water is exempt. I don't think that it says that well water is exempt, but
yeah,
that one I may need to get back to you on that one.
Now I'm not
I
an
understand.
attorney. No, I'm not an attorney, but let me just chime in here a little bit. If your well water is not potable, then you're probably in good shape. So, but there's going to be very fine legal arguments that can be made in this regard. And likely the law does apply to you because the intention is to try to save water. And I think that is the intent of the law. But if you don't have a regulatory agency that's going to be knocking on your door, I would expect that a Water Resource Department, statewide agency would be the one. But the intent of the law is to try to save water, and that's what we should do. Whether it's an actual violation or not, I think there's an argument. My history I've been in water law and water rights for 30 years, and I had a job in that field. And you likely it's going to be split, and you're going to have to go to court and fight that one if you decide not to use the water. And then you'll get a determination one way or the other. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day on this because I think, the quality of the questions are such, not that they're not good questions, but they are very specific, and we are running short on time, and we've lost actually a lot of our viewership. So I want to say thanks to Ashley for participating today. Great presentation. I see a lot of folks are interested in getting your slides, so Connor will be sending those out. So I want to say thank you for that. And thank you to all the ECHO members who are here today and contributing and supporting ECHO. We appreciate that very much, especially participating in our webinars. For those of you who are not ECHO members, and I know there's some of you out there, please consider becoming a member and supporting our HOA boards throughout the country by being a member of ECHO. We are the only association nationally that is here just for HOA boards and its HOA homeowners. So to join ECHO, simply go to our website, www.echo-ca.org, and click on the membership tab. You can join individually, or you can join as a community, or you can get a group of you in the community and join as a community as well. For ECHO members, again, thank you for supporting us. And please invite your friends, boards, and especially management firms and vendors to join ECHO. A simple invitation is often all it takes to persuade someone to join our group. If you would like to become more involved with ECHO, we have a few opportunities for you. Please refer to the slide. If you see anything that looks particularly good, drop me an email at dzappone@echo-ca.org. And we'd be happy to include you. We do have the ECHO Volunteers Corps right now. We started that a few months ago, and we're starting to get people involved with us that are interested in participating and being volunteers in a number of different areas. Now for our other announcements. The ECHO HOA University has an educational program focused on HOA board preparedness. The core curriculum of 10 courses is designed for high quality training and is available for HOA board members, interested homeowners, and professionals, basically everyone. Your participation in this program will earn you a certificate of completion, and you will be an HOA board member, a prepared HOA board member. This is a good program for those new board members. It's also a really good program to fight off community apathy toward the board and HOAs, get them involved. A lot of times it's just a matter of training people and giving them some resources, and they'll be more involved. The courses are offered live online, and most of the courses are actually recorded, and you can take those on demand. There are only 2 courses, the ethics and the capstone course, that are not on demand. If you or someone you want to know want to participate in the program, want more information, just contact Connor. His email is on the slides, and he'll be happy to help you. The first class starts at the end of January, so we're just starting our new year. This is our 2nd year of the program. We start our 2025 resource panels next week. These are our smaller groups that are regional and try to tackle regional issues. Our first set of panels will include the Sacramento Resource Panel, the ECHO Club at Rossmoor, or TCAR, and the East Bay Panel. And at the Sacramento Resource Panel, they will be talking about legal changes in 2025 and things to keep your eye on as a board. At the ECHO Club at Rossmoor, they will be discussing attorney, client, and board and homeowner relationships. We'll focus in on who the attorney works for and how they can work for you, and you can best leverage their skills. At the East Bay Resource Panel, the discussion will be on construction management. I don't think we have a speaker right now, but we have a couple invitations out. So that should be a lot of fun. I also want to just throw in a plug for the Los Angeles Resource Panel, which is going to be held in Burbank, and we are going to be talking to experts in the fire industry and insurance industry. We have an attorney and an invited attorney and a insurance agent that will be there, broker that will be there to discuss how to deal with all of these fires and get some of those questions answered. If you are down in that area in Southern California, we invite you to be there. It will be an in-person meeting, and it's going to be at the Burbank Library. So we hope to see you there. We do have 3 larger in-person events planned for this year with multiple speakers and 20 or so exhibitors. So we have quite a good little program here for everyone. The Northern California Education Seminar is June 7th, 2025, tentatively planned for the Villages in San Jose, which is in the service area of Valley Water as well. Then we have the Southern California Educational Seminar, which will be October 10th in Laguna Hills, California. Then our last event of the year is our legislative update and Northern California Educational Seminar. It is November 15th, 2025, and we have that one over in Walnut Creek. You're invited to participate and be a part of that. We'll have a number of different speakers, and we'll also have exhibitors there willing and excited to talk to you. Once again, I want to say thank you to Ashley Shannon for this timely update on non-functional turf. You did a great job. And of course, thanks to all of you for participating today and making this a successful event. We'd love to see you here. ECHO appreciates your investment in education to foster better quality of life in our communities.